This first story is called I Was Nearly Kidnapped at 14. So this was a few years back, and I was walking home from a friend's house after hanging out at hers after school. It was around 9:30 p.m. in summer, so the sun had for the most part set. It was relatively dark, but still bright enough where I could make out the things around me. I was stoned and was walking very slowly down the road to my house, which was only about a 20-minute walk away from my friend's. The majority of my walk was spent on a straight, quiet suburban street that was very familiar to me, as I had done this walk plenty of times. After maybe 5 minutes of walking, I noticed the first and only car to drive past. It was an old, beat-up, white Honda, which I didn't take much notice to until another few minutes passed and it drove past again. Still, I wasn't concerned and continued about my walk, admiring the cracks in the pavement or doing whatever else a stoned 14-year-old does on a walk. Another minute passes and this car drives past again, this time more slowly, and I feel my stomach drop. I couldn't make out who was inside, but I knew something was off. I've always been very timid, so I tried to convince myself it's just paranoia and that I was just being dramatic, until it drives past again about 2 minutes later and parked maybe 10 feet in front of me. That's creepy. As I approached the car, I kept my head down, but I hear a "Hey there," and sure enough, I look up and there was a rough-looking man who you could tell just from appearance alone that he smelled like stale cigarettes and body odor, sitting in the driver's seat smiling at me. The lack of teeth and dirty shirt this man had on gave me a horrible vibe, so I just gave a little smile back and continued walking. I look up and notice he's driving alongside me, and he asks if I had directions to the closest gas station. I stopped and pointed in the general direction and told him where to go, and that it was less than a 5-minute drive away, when out of nowhere he just started to laugh. I kinda just stared in confusion and fear as he squinted his eyes at me like he was trying to get a better look at my face. Then he said, "I'll take a guess, but I think I can tell from those eyes you've been smoking pot, little miss." I kinda just laughed and tried to walk away when he said, "Come back." So I stopped in my tracks. Why I didn't just keep walking is beyond me. But I turned around and he pulls out a rather large bag of weed and asks if I want some. I tell him I'm okay and I have no money, and he says something along the lines of, "I don't need your money, take it." I reassure him I'm fine and don't need it and try to continue walking, but nonetheless, he continued driving alongside me. He then asked if I need a ride home and tells me it's too dark to be walking alone, which really frightened me. He continued trying to coerce me into his car, and I became more and more unsettled. I began to look for the closest house with the light on, and after finding one, I tell him, "This is my house, good night," and I walk up some stranger's driveway and walk straight into their home. There was a middle-aged couple sitting in the living room, and they looked extremely shocked and equally angry, and I just started to sob out of shock and relief and apologize profusely. I explained to them what just happened, and the very kind lady assured me I did the right thing and gave me a ride home. Looking back, I probably should have knocked, but I was scared, under the influence, and still a child, and the homeowners were very understanding. That's nice. Still one of the scariest things that has happened to me, but I'm so glad that I trusted my gut and got away from that man whose intentions seemed anything but pure. I still consider myself lucky that I got away. So that's the end of the story, but they came back and edited it with an update, and they said, "Thank you for all the positive responses. I'm guessing some of you were wondering whether the police were called. They were. They took a statement from me, but because I hadn't remembered the plate number and I didn't know what model or year the car was, nothing really came of it. The police were super unhelpful, and while taking my statement, the officer was super unprofessional and was almost yelling at me that I needed to speak up, which made me cry. Keep in mind, this was the day after, so I was still very shaken up about the whole ordeal, and I've always had a very quiet, shy nature to me, like I had mentioned before. But there was an alert posted on the local school's website, and the story circled around the community Facebook page, telling people to keep an eye out and to make sure their children were accompanied while outside playing. I'm glad that my story helped potentially keep other children in my community safe, but it was disheartening that they never caught the guy. And that's the end of that story. So that guy is still out there, hopefully not trying to pick up teenagers or children or people in general. It's fucking crazy. I'm glad she got away. These stories always blow my mind, because I can't believe there's people out there who take the time to be pieces of shits and kidnap people. That's just crazy. I'll never understand it. Okay, I'm gonna move on to story number 2. We're gonna get into the spooky paranormal. I did my nails today. Spooky paranormal. Okay, so this actually made like one of the top stories on Reddit for ghost stories. Let's dive in. This story is called What Did I Encounter on My Family's Land? My family has around 360 acres in northern Oklahoma that has been in our family since the land rush. Growing up, the family would meet there for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but as the family expanded, it was quickly outgrown. Nowadays, I'm the only person that goes there, and I went there regularly to train with my firearms. America. I run my normal drills, and as the sun starts to set, things get stranger. Odd smells, like a dirty litter box plus body odor, started coming around, and I noticed that the coyotes were crossing the field west of me, almost as if they were intentionally avoiding entering the woods nearby. Then I started hearing interference coming from my headset, and what sounded like disembodied voices speaking in an indiscernible language. Now I'm starting to worry. I start gathering my things, and I hear what sounds like a woman's blood-curdling scream coming from the woods. Pausing the story. So this is just me, but if I heard a woman screaming in the woods, my instinct would be to take my gun, since this guy has guns, and run towards it to save her. That's just me, though. If you heard a blood-curdling woman screaming from the woods that you're right next to, would you run into the situation, or would you run away from the situation and get help? I'm curious. This is one of the stories where I would probably die, because I want to save some woman that I don't know. Okay, back to the story. Blood-curdling screams coming from the woods. Around the same time, I got what I can only describe as a nauseating, omnidirectional feeling of being watched, shortly followed by very distinct footsteps trudging through the foliage in the tree line, approximately 30 yards from my position. I've been an avid hunter since childhood and familiar with noises of the woods, and the cadence of the footsteps was indicative of a large bipedal creature, oddly human-like. I pull my phone out to take video, and I start scanning the tree line with my flashlight. Standing behind a tree at the edge of the tree line was a tall, black silhouette with spindly limbs and a pale face, looking directly at me. I managed to capture a great still image of it from the video that I will try to find and attach. I quickly grabbed my range bag and made a run towards my truck. I got about 50 yards from the truck, and the light post on our property that is hooked up to a county power and has never turned off in the 20 years I've been there suddenly cuts off. Now, I'm blindly running in the direction I believe my truck apologize for the long post, but I'm finally ready to get this out in the open for interpretation. I tend to think of myself as a rational person that doesn't necessarily believe in the woo kind of stuff, although my mother described me as being sensitive and somewhat gravitated towards energies as a child. What does that mean? I was doing everything I could to rationalize or come up with a reasonable explanation for the things I was experiencing, but I have no explanation. The kind of fear this experience put into me is and was unlike any kind of fear I've ever felt. That's the end of the story. I'm really disappointed because they said they were going to post a picture, but they never did. Which leads me to believe that it's probably not true. But if it is true, that's extremely scary. I wonder if they ever went back. Why would you go back? And I wonder if he called for help. There was a woman screaming. I wonder. The comments are really good for this story. I'll link the story down below if you want to read the comments and all that. That's good. Okay, this next story is special. It's very special because it was emailed to me by someone who watches this channel. So I'm really grateful. I read through the story and it's a creepy one, so I definitely wanted to share it with everybody. This was sent to me by someone named Jade. So, Jade, if you're watching this, thank you so much for emailing me the story. I am excited to read it, so let's jump right in. This story is called Something Possessed Me on Whiskey Hollow Road. The state of New York is filled with paranormal activity, from Alcatraz Island to the Amityville Horror House, the Fox Sisters' home, and the Landmark Theater. But in my small town, just outside of Syracuse, we have Whiskey Hollow Road. This incredibly narrow road has no lights and stretches for 5 miles. On one side of your vehicle is a seemingly endless, tall hill covered in trees, and on the other side is a 30-foot drop into a ravine. So basically, if you have to make a 3-point turn on this street, you'd better be a professional stunt driver. And the story goes like this. Back in the 50s, a married couple lived in a small shack on one end of the road. They were a seemingly normal couple, though some speculated domestic issues and possible infidelity. One day, the husband came home to his wife's body collapsed on the floor of their home, covered in blood and a shotgun by her side. The pain was too much, and not too long after she was buried, the man took a rope to the opposite end of the street and hung himself from a tree. So, no matter what side you enter or exit the street, you're greeted by suicide. Through the years since, there have been a few bodies discovered in the ravine, both with blunt trauma wounds and some seemingly clean, as if they just dropped dead and rolled down the hill to rest. That's creepy. That's really creepy. In the middle of the road, about 2 miles in, is a small cave, which has long been speculated to be a site of some local ritualistic ceremonies, which could be easily dismissed if not for the occasional bloody rag or other ominous items found inside. My story begins in 2010. I was in my junior year of high school, and my mother, a horror buff herself, was looking up some spooky places for a creepy road trip she wanted to take. She stumbled upon the Whiskey Road lore, and that night, my mother, my brother, a cousin, and an aunt hopped in the minivan and drove the 15 minutes to the haunted street. I'll admit it, I scoffed a little, being a too cool for everything punk kid, but I was intrigued enough to come, and I'll admit, when the van rolled up to that tiny dirt road, my mood changed. I felt an immediate shift in energy as my mom crept the van into the entrance of the road, and here's where I need to stress just how dark this road is at night. Imagine the darkest place you've ever been, and go about 10 times darker than that. Headlights are barely useful, and honestly, you can only see about 2 feet in front of your vehicle, even with your high beams on. Just before we rolled in, a pickup truck whipped around us and flew down the road, and I mean flew. He had to have been going about 60 on the street that, realistically, going 20 would be risky. I fully expected to see his truck flipped over in the ravine as we entered. The road is pitch black and shockingly quiet. You know when you used to play hide and seek and would hide in the closet or another small space, and you could hear your heart beating and your lungs making air for you? Yeah, it was that quiet. We shined flashlights through the trees as we passed, and we got our first glimpse of the cave in real life. There's some dark energy in that cave, man. All in all, the drive was not terrifying. We made it to the end of the road, and just as we were about to clear the trees, a burst of light shot across our eyes. We squinted to see the pickup truck sitting at the end of the street, facing us, as if it was waiting to see if we would make it out. We pulled out onto the regular road, and this guy takes off down the Whiskey Hollow again. To this day, I don't know how he did it. No either, girl. I don't know. The next day, my mother was disappointed that nothing super spooky happened, and decided we would head out into the daytime to see what the road looked like all lit up. We rolled into the entrance, and yes, it was a lot less unsettling, but then again, isn't everything less scary when the lights are on? The silence was still there too, which shocked me a little. Not a bird or an owl, and as I'm writing this, I realize that I never once saw an animal in those woods, which, for upstate New York, is pretty odd. Usually in the dense woods, you would see a chipmunk or even a garden snake, but nothing. Mom decided to pull up to the cave, and we all got out to inspect it in the daylight. It wasn't as deep as we thought it would be, but there was some disturbing items inside. A small baby blanket with suspicious stains, and a rattle with some colorful beads inside of it, some alcohol cans, and an old lighter. When I saw the blanket, I felt a knot in my stomach. My mom brushed it off, and we went on with the rest of the day. Flash forward to my senior year of high school. I was hanging a lot with a cousin who was not only a bad influence, but didn't give half a thought to anything paranormal. I, however, was getting into full baby witch mode this year. I learned to use a pendulum for communication, candle work, and some light palm reading. So, we're hanging with a mutual friend one night, and we're bored. My cousin, let's call her Marie, says she wants to do something creepy. Our friend, we'll call her Kelly, says she heard about a haunted road somewhere. I butt right in and give them the whole story of Whiskey Hollow, and we're off. The whole ride, we're listening to music and having typical teenage fun, but the minute we approached the cross street, it was like my body could sense the energy again. I was in the back seat and was playing it cool as we pulled into the beginning of the road, but I felt the energy shift hard. It was sunset hour, so we had some light, but I knew our time was limited. We're rolling through, and I reiterate the story again as we pass the trees. Marie is mocking everything and calling bullshit, but Kelly is listening as we approach the cave. She excitedly points it out, and we stop the car. We approach the cave. The road is silent as usual, and our feet crunching the leaves seem to echo in its vast space. Marie walks straight into the cave like the horror movie cliche she is, and kicks at the dirt, talking shit, just being your standard non-believing jerk. I tell her to chill because if there are any spirits here, she's being very disrespectful, which just fuels her fire, and she continues to be a dick. Kelly and I are standing on a large rock, just watching her be an idiot, and as I open my mouth to tell her to stop again, something happens. Without anything touching us, both mine and Kelly's knees buckle as if someone hit the backs of our legs, and we fall into the grass and leaves. That's scary. That's actually really scary. We whip around, terrified, and fully expecting to see a deranged mountain man standing there. it's not like gravity took us down or we lost our footing. Oh my God! Marie screams from the car. We race towards the vehicle and ask what happened. She fumbles her words, telling us to get in the car now. She says that when she opened the door, a bright white light dashed across the front of the car. It was too solid to be smoke, but not fully shaped to be a figure. I wondered for a split second if she was messing with us, but her face was pale and had no color. Marie never looked like this. She was actually worried. Kelly hopped into the front seat, and I slid into the back. Marie started the car, and as we pulled away, I couldn't help but give one last look to the cave. And I saw something. There was a figure crouched down on the top of the cave. It looked slender and was completely black, like the leather man from American Horror Story, but extremely skinny. I thought I was crazy, and just as it started to stand, Kelly let out a blood-curdling scream from the seat. Something's on the cave. Marie floored the gas pedal, and we whipped down the street. I was trying to come to terms with the fact that at least two of us saw an entity on that cave, and it couldn't have been an actual person. There was no way. I am going to put a picture of the leather man from American Horror Story to give you an idea of what they saw. Except it's supposed to be a skinnier version. We would have seen someone on top of the cave when we first approached it. This wasn't a person, it was a thing. Marie shouted her mother's address to the car's GPS system, and it began routing us away from the haunted road. Its navigation voice would chime in, directing Marie's turns as we tried to explain the figure we saw. And then the GPS said, "Turn right." Marie was so frazzled from her own experience and was avidly listening to ours that she turned without thinking, and when we looked out the front window again, we were back at the top of the Whiskey Hollow Road. The GPS brought us back to the top of the road. We couldn't turn around. We had to drive down Whiskey Hollow again. "What is wrong with you?" Marie is glaring at me from the front seat. "What?" I answer. "Why are you acting like that?" I had no idea what she was talking about. I then looked out the windows and saw that we were parked at a pizza place in Marie's hometown. How did we get here? I thought. Marie then explained to me that the entire ride back, I was silently giving her a death stare through the rearview mirror and wouldn't speak when she talked to me. I would only smirk, and apparently on the highway I tried to open the door, fumbling with the lock and handle, but she had the child lock on. I remembered none of it. In my point of view, we turned down Whiskey Hollow for the second time, and then we were sitting in this parking lot. I've thought for years about what that occurrence was all about, and the only thing I can think of is that something noticed me. When I first visited with my mother, and when I returned with my cousin and friend, it recognized and latched onto me. And possibly because my cousin was mocking and kicking things, it was going to use me as a vessel to attack her. I refused to return to that place and wonder if the entity that got inside of me, the entity that stood on top of the cave, was the same thing that drove the couple in the 50s to kill themselves on either side of Whiskey Hollow Road. And that's the end of that story. That's a really, really well-written story. You can picture it very vividly, and I always appreciate a well-written, creepy story. So thank you again, Jade, for sending this in. This is an amazing story and a horrifying experience. I totally understand why you would never go back to that place ever again. It sounds like a heavy and evil place in plainest terms, and I wouldn't take the risk of ever going back there again either. Okay, and now, this is the last story of today. The story is called "My Childhood Home Used to Be a School, and I'm Pretty Sure It Traumatized Me." Now, I don't know a ton about the history of my childhood home, but I know that it was old as hell and one of the creepiest places I've ever lived in. It was a 4-story house with lots of dark places and long stairways. Basically, it was really big. There wasn't a moment in that house that I felt like I was truly alone, and there wasn't a hallway that felt truly empty. I was just barely out of toddlerhood when I started to develop severe anxiety. I was afraid to do anything alone. I was always checking behind me, sleeping with my head under the covers, seeing things, hearing things, you name it. I'm almost 100% sure that there was something paranormal making me feel that way. I wasn't the only one seeing and hearing things, though. My older brother shared a room with me, and he always slept on the top bunk. His bed was maybe a foot away from the ceiling, and the attic was right above us. He told me that some nights he'd hear adult footsteps right above his head, just circling the attic. But it gets weirder. He's told me that at one point he woke up next to a shadowy figure just lying in the bed with him. He claims the figure had two white specks for eyes and that it wasn't acting malicious, just lying there silently. This might have been some kind of sleep paralysis hallucination, but considering the other events, I wouldn't be surprised if it was some kind of spirit. And now onto the worst one, the playroom. I'm getting chills right now. I don't know if I just got really cold because it's cold outside, or if I'm just really creeped out right now. All these stories back to back, man. Okay, the playroom. That was the creepiest fucking thing in the house, and I got shivers just thinking about it. It sat at the end of a long hallway on the top floor, just below the attic. My room was down the hall from it, and it was always pitch black. I remember staying up at night, staring at it, just in case something moved. I often couldn't take my eyes away in fear of something appearing if I did. Somehow, every time I looked at that doorway, the door was wide open, and the door wasn't weak either. It worked perfectly fine and wouldn't open unless you turned the knob. I'd ask my dad to close it before I went to bed, and it would stay closed for a bit until it just slid open again. I'm not a door specialist, but it was just arguably creepy. But wait, there's more. Now that we're older and out of that house, me and my brother found out that we shared a terrifying experience. We both saw something incredibly creepy in the same place. I remember it vaguely. It was a small, neutral, glowing white face in the playroom. It looked a bit like a little kid from my memory. It had no body, just a pure white face in the dark. It was around my height, and its eyes were kind of just not there. I don't remember much, but I remember it was the single most terrifying thing I'd been through. I don't know if I hallucinated or what, but I know it felt incredibly real at the time. Maybe it was a dream or something, because all I remember is seeing that fucking face, getting scared, and running back to my bed. I don't think I screamed, but I seriously don't remember. I kind of love/hate thinking about it because it just makes my hair stand on edge. Thanks to that house, I have now been diagnosed with anxiety. That's not funny, I'm sorry. I'm taking medication for it, and I'm alright, but I thought it was worth noting. I could go on, but I really can't think of anything else right now. And that's the end of that story. Very, very simple, creepy story, very effective. Honestly, dark rooms, dark places are just creepy because your imagination goes everywhere and anywhere. Anything could be hiding in the darkness with you. So that's why I sleep with my TV on, because I'm a big baby and I'm afraid of sleeping in complete darkness. Don't tell anybody. Alright guys, I hope you had fun listening to these creepy stories. I legitimately feel like these are all great fucking stories, and I'm glad I found them. And thank you, Jade, for sending yours in as well. That one was an amazing story.